Hello everyone, in this video we will talk about the CSS Flexbox, and I will go through the Flexbox in a bit of a different way. Usually in those videos, in those tutorials on YouTube, you can see somebody just coding and showing you. In my opinion, it would take a lot of time for me to actually write the code, so I will just show you everything that you can do with CSS Flexbox kinda theoretically in here. And then I will actually create a project, so some sort of responsive website where I can actually use the Flexbox and CSS Grid in real world project. So without any further ado, let's get into it. So Flexbox is a tool that can basically allow us to somehow design elements on our website. Usually it works this way, that you have some sort of container, that's this purple thing, and then you have items. Okay, so you can think of it as this container is some sort of section on your website, and these items are articles. Okay, you can think of it this way, and you can style them in a lot of different ways. So first of all, what you need to do is put the display flex to the container. Okay, so to this purple thing, you will add the display flex. Then what you can do is basically define the flex direction. So the flex direction attribute, once again, you are styling currently everything that's on the left side, means that you are styling the container. Okay, so you can define the flex direction, basically in which direction those items will be placed. Okay, so if you have this first one, it's a row direction. You can also do it in a reverse order. Okay, so that's just this reverse row. Okay, you can do it inside a column, so from top to bottom, right, in a one column, that's this thing, and you can do it reverse, so column reverse. This is a very simple way how you can actually style whatever you want. Actually, it's very simple. So you can just do display flex, and then if you want those items to be at one row, right, you can just say I want this flex direction to be row. Okay, and it's as simple as that. Then what you can also do is define the flex wrap. So basically the ending, okay, of this, you can put it into a no wrap. That means it will go on forever. Okay, so it will be only on one line. Okay, so you can maybe think of it, if you noticed on, for example, mobile phones, right? When you have some sort of categories in your applications, it's just on one line and you can just slide through them, right? So that might be a use case for this. Okay, you can also use wrap. So that means it will be wrapped. So the items that would overflow this container will start on the next line. Okay, and you can also use wrap reverse. So that's just reverse the order, right? Reverse the order of those items. It's very simple, pretty straightforward, right? In my opinion, right? So the wrap reverse flex items will wrap onto multiple lines, but from bottom to top. Okay, so from bottom to top, that's the reverse part. Cool. Then you can also define the flex flow. So this is just a shorthand. I will not talk you through this because you can do it by just defining the flex wrap and flex direction on its own. Another thing that you can do is actually justify content. So you can actually align the whole content to the start. So that means to the left. Okay, so to the left of the whole container. You can put it at the end, so that means to the right. You can put it at center, right? So this third thing at center. You can also put a space between, right? So space between means that you will have a space between those items, right? A equally distributed space between these items. Okay, so this one space and this one space are two equal spaces. Okay. You can also have space around, which is very similar to space between, only this time there is just also the space in front of the first and behind the last element. Okay, and you can also put space evenly, so that just spaced it out totally evenly. Okay, so every space have the same size. But this is pretty much it. You can also align the items. So you can align these items to start. So if you have items that have different height, okay, you can align them to start. That means at the top of the container. You can also put them at the end. That means on the bottom of the container, and you can put it on center. Okay, so there is like the center line, right? So the center of every item will be placed exactly on the center of the whole container. And you can also do stretch. So that means it will take all the space that is available. You can also use baseline. That's just using the text, right? So that the text is placed directly at the center, okay? And yeah, this is pretty much it. Lastly, you can do just align content. So that's just aligning the whole content, okay? So this was just, you can put like space between those lines, okay? But in here, you are just styling the overall line, okay? If that makes sense. So in here you are, the align items means you are styling one line, and the align content actually means that you are styling the, basically, the set of lines, if that makes sense. Hopefully it does. So you can align these sets of lines at the top, that means flex start. You can align them to the bottom, that means flex end. You can align them to center. You can stretch them so that they take equal part of the whole container, okay? You can put some space between, so that means there is a equal space between those lines. And you can also use space around, so that means there is space also at the beginning and at the end of the container. And if I'm not mistaken, that should be every attribute that you can actually set. So this align content, once again, you are aligning on the y-axis, but you are aligning all of the rows. With this, with align items, right? Items, you are aligning only those items on one line, and you are aligning them once again on the y-axis, okay? Then you have justify content. Once again, you are aligning on the x-axis, okay? And you are also somehow, you can also change how the space is distributed, okay? Then you also have the flex wrap, that means wrapping. And lastly, flex direction. Let me go through the items, right? So currently that was the container, and the container is actually the hard part in Flex. With those items, there is not much that you can do. First thing that you can change is the order. So you can just say that an item will have some sort of order, which is just an integer, right? As you can see in here, if one item have -1, it's placed as a first. Then 1 is after like 3, 2, and 5, right? It kind of makes sense from smallest to largest number, right? So you can just change the order of those items via CSS. Then you have also a flex grow. So by default, this is set to 1. So if you want a one element to take somehow 2 times the space of the others, right? You can just say that the flex grow will be 2, okay? And it will take 2 times the space of these, okay? So you can kind of see that if you put those ones together, it would be about same size as this second, right? So that's basically what it does. You are just defining how much bigger it should be, this item should be, compared to the other items that have 1. And you can specify this to multiple items, right? So for example, you can put this first one, it can have flex grow of 3, and the second one can have flex grow of 2. That's like completely valid, okay? Cool. You can also use flex shrink. That's pretty much the same, only this time it's like making it smaller, right? Shrink it. Usually you don't necessarily need to use this, right? In some rare cases you need to use this, but it's not on day-to-day basis where you need to use something like this. So the flex basis actually just defines the default size of an element before the remaining space is distributed. By default, it is set to auto. So that means it will take my width and my height, right? And the space that's remaining will be distributed based on how we define the container, right? You can also just put some sort of length in there. So you can just say that it will take 20% of the available space, right? You can define the basically size, right? In pixels, rams, whatever you can have, okay? Then we have flex. So this is just a shortened, right, for the flex grow, flex shrink, and flex basis. I will not talk you through this. I recommend you, definitely from beginning, I recommend you use these separately just to keep your code maybe a bit more easier to read, okay? Then we have lastly align self. So this is basically just align items, right? Only this time you are just aligning this one item, right, that you are styling. So you have some sort of item, that means this one item. And if you, for example, in the container, set this to flex start, that means all of the items will be on top. And you can say, you can define the align self, and you can say it to, for example, flex end, you would get this result, okay? So you can once again set it to flex start, flex end, center, baseline, or auto. Auto means that it will just take the container. Okay, so whatever container specified, auto means the item will be aligned like container says. And yeah, so this is really pretty much it. I know it might be a bit harder to actually understand this. I promise you it will get better once we will go through these projects. Okay, if it isn't clear yet, I have another presentation that can maybe help you a little bit. So in here you have some sort of container. Okay, so this border is the container, and you can just select different options and it will change the layout. So if we have row, it's like this. If we put reverse row, you can see that it goes from 5 to 1. If we put column, it's displayed as this. And if we put column reverse, it starts from 5, goes to 1. Then inside here we can put wrap, so that means it's wrapped. If we put no wrap, it actually continues forever. And if we put wrap reverse, it starts, it reverses the lines, right? So we have 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, and currently it's 4, 5, and 1, 2, 3, okay? Then we can have the align items. So flex start, flex end, center, baseline, and stretch, right? Stretch, it will take all the available space. Then we have justify content, flex end, flex start, space between. Okay, so we have spaces equally divided between those elements. Center, okay, no spaces between, spaces are at the front and at the end. Space around, that means there's also some space around these first, in front of the first and behind the last element. Then we have align content. Once again, this is set to stretch, so it takes basically all the available space of the container. If we put space around, you can see that it takes like, there's like some space behind the last row and in front of the first row, okay? If we put space between, you can notice that the space in front of the last and behind the, in front of the first, behind the last row was removed. If we put center, you can see a lot of space between here. Flex end, it's aligned to the bottom, flex start to the top, okay? And in the item, if we just align this, I think we are aligning this third one, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so if we put flex start, it goes directly to the top. It doesn't change any of these elements, right? We are aligning only this item. If we put flex end, it goes to the bottom, center, baseline, and stretch. It will take the whole available space. Then we have flex grow. So for example, inside here, if I define 2, right, and click somewhere else, you can see that this element is much larger than these, okay? What happens if I put 1 in here? You can see it got once again larger, right? Because there is 0 by default. If I put 0, nothing changes, right? If I put 0.5, you can see that it got a little bit bigger, okay? A little bit bigger. Then we have flex shrink. This is, I think, 1 by default. Yeah, it is 1 by default. If you put, for example, 2, it will get smaller, right? So you are basically dividing by this number. If I put 5 in here, it got really small. Cool. So then we have just the flex, so I will not talk about this right now. And then we have the order. So for example, if I put to the element 1, have the order of 1, it will be the last element actually, okay? Inside here, if I put the element 2, I can say that the order will be 5, and it's actually behind the last element. So you can notice that all of these have 0 as a default, okay? What happens if I put to the element 2 the same value as to element 1? It will still be behind the element 1 because it is behind it in the HTML, okay? So yeah, that's pretty much actually all there is to Flexbox. It's actually fairly simple and straightforward, and there is a lot of use cases for Flexbox. So I promise you we will use Flexbox a lot in our project that we will create in the next week, I think. So until then, feel free to hit the like button, feel free to subscribe to this channel so that you stay notified about the upcoming videos, and I will see you next time. Bye.